You're listening to the Marketing Boss Podcast, episode number 1.
This is the Marketing Boss Podcast, where today's top marketing professionals reveal their best tips, tools, and strategies, and we all become better leaders because of it. And here's your host, video marketing expert, Parshell Houghton.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Marketing Boss. My name is Parshell Houghton, and I'm so excited you're with me today. We've got a great show with my good friend Kahiga Tiagha. He is a serial entrepreneur here in Philly, where he currently manages a law firm called Tiagha and Associates. He's had experience in advising clients on developing and executing successful business growth strategies, and I'm really excited because in this interview, he breaks down a major success he had with a Yodel campaign, as well as different tips on how small businesses can remain consistent in their marketing. So key today. But before we get into that, I want to thank those who have connected with me so far via social media. If you'd like to connect with me, you can find me, Parshell Houghton, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Also be sure to join our private LinkedIn group called the Marketing Boss Club. That's where marketing professionals like you and me can collaborate and grow together. Again, that's the Marketing Boss Club. You can find it on LinkedIn, so come on in and join the group. All right, now let's jump into our interview with Kahiga. You guys are really going to like this. All right, welcome to the show, Kahiga.
Thank you so much. I appreciate being on.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on today. Like we've already been talking, I think this is going to be a really, really great show. So let's dive right into it. Sure. To start, I know I've already introduced to the listeners who you are, reading your bio, but tell us a little bit more about your background, because I know that you've had your hands in a number of different businesses, and I guess how that has delved into marketing for you.
Sure. So, by the way, I hope you spared your listeners my entire bio because, by now, like everybody's left the room. So in the edit, make sure that you make it a little bit shorter.
I got you.
Yeah, just some words of advice. But as far as my story. Whenever I've told my story, I have always started all the way at the beginning for some reason. And I think to the extent that, if we're talking about marketing, I have always talked about the personal side before I've gone into the professional. One, because out of habit, but two, I think it is part of how I've always marketed myself. So, not to deviate from the norm, I'm going to start from kind of the beginning. And it's important because I think it's of my perspective. So I'm born to African parents, hence the name Kahiga Tiagha. My mother was Kenyan, my father is Cameroonian, but I was born here in the United States. And I lived on the continent of Africa for a while and was fortunate enough to go to school in Europe, and then returned to the United States to go through law school. And so after kind of a traditional career where I just went through law school and then directly practicing for a large law firm, after a while I got the itch to try out entrepreneurship for myself. And my very first venture, kind of serious everyday venture, was a consulting firm called TK Consulting Group, which was essentially leveraging my legal skills, but trying to develop business for clients that I had served while being an associate at law firms.
Okay.
And then beginning to explore other kind of business opportunities, international business opportunities. And so, that's when I began to, think about branding, think about, positioning in the marketplace and all those. But I was not sophisticated at all because I had gone from being kind of serving partners and so not really having to think about business development to doing that for the first time at TK Consulting. And that's when marketing, I had to begin to think about marketing. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so after TK Consulting, did that for 3 years. The market went completely haywire, if you remember, in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so my father was like, for the love of God, man, dig out your law degree and start a law firm. So I was like, I got you. So June 2000, June 1st, 2009, I started a law firm called Gonzalez and Tiagha with Peter Gonzalez, who currently runs the Welcoming Center for New Pennsylvanians here in Philadelphia. And we essentially ran a practice where he practiced immigration and I practiced corporate law, which I've always done. I'm trained as a mergers and acquisitions lawyer, but in my own practice have done mostly commercial and transactional work, and we can get into that if it's relevant. But under the brand Gonzalez Tiagha, that's when, it was two people who had burgeoning reputations in the Philadelphia legal scene who were trying to take advantage of this unique practice. And so marketing became very important, especially because of the kind of work we were doing and the community we were serving. So that's when we became a lot more sophisticated. And through that process, I began to, interact with more and more sophisticated marketing, professionals, and ended up realizing that in addition to marketing, before you even step out there, you have to really make sure that your brand is something that you figured out as well, both in terms of your marketing, the collateral, and also just who you're going after and making sure that your brand speaks to that. So,
absolutely, and I love the fact that you mentioned how, your personal story really matters. You just didn't jump into the professional piece, but you started with the personal. So I thought that was pretty amazing. And I know that as it relates to that, different people have different views on what marketing looks like what it is. So I know I'm throwing an interesting question at you, but how would you define marketing and branding?
Yeah, so branding and marketing are two completely different things. Branding is the manner in which you are trying to convey who you are and what your company is and your philosophy in without necessarily having a lot of writing or the ability to speak to the person, right? So it's the look and feel of what you give off in the space that you occupy. And while, having been a lawyer and not really, being exposed to branding as kind of a concept because I wasn't running my own business at the time, I really did not understand how important it was. But I was fortunate through one of my kind of many side projects to build a relationship with a gentleman called DeCosta Bailey. He runs a creative design shop in Vancouver, Canada called Chocolate Soup, and the soup has 2 O's in it, so chocolatesoup.com.
Okay.
And he essentially turned on the light switch in my mind about the importance of design and the importance of branding. And if you allow me just to go on a little bit further and how it really applies itself. So if you look at my law firm logo, right? The law firm logo is an Adinkra symbol. I cannot pronounce the Ghanaian word for it, but it translates into the word twistings. And the reason why we even ended up with an Adinkra symbol is because in telling, DeCosta, this gentleman who has done, worked with larger companies, to say, now that my practice has moved from, being in partnership with Peter Gonzalez because he went to run the Welcoming Center, so obviously he left the practice, I reoriented the practice to focus on international matters and a focus on working in sub-Saharan Africa, doing sub-Saharan transactions. And so he wanted something that not only projected what was in that space a relatively sophisticated background because of my experience with large law firm, but also presenting on its face a brand that said, we are African and we understand that we want to convey that you are going to be treated in a particular way. And so if you look at the brand, the choice of blue that we did, the Adinkra, the way we sculpted it, there's an element of cell memory there that everybody who picked up the card was just like, I love your card. And, when I talked about us having an African-centric practice, the story just kind of fell into place together, and so to me, that is branding. And now when people see the card, they always say, I've seen this somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think that's because the brand has really developed over time. That's branding. Marketing is a consistent program that a business deploys to make sure that it generates leads for sales purposes. Whether it is positioning yourself as a knowledge leader, whether it's positioning yourself, whether it's just doing direct, your direct newsletter on a regular basis, whether it is, doing radio shows like this to be able to position yourself as a thought leader. These are all things that will generate sales leads that hopefully then convert into, actual sales. And it's as consistent a program, and where you allocate your time and your resources to make sure that you get as much of a return as possible on the campaigns that you put together to attract people to your company. That's, to me, the difference between the two. Sorry to go on.
Absolutely. So that's a really, really awesome definition. I never heard it explained that way in terms of something being programmatic, but that absolutely is what it is. So tell me, I know that because most of the listeners here, of course, they are other leaders in marketing. Maybe they're marketing director for their company, or they are the CMO. But we're talking to leaders of marketing, of course. So let's dive into a little bit more specifically as relates to different campaigns that you've been a part of, that you've ran for the different companies that you've been involved in. So what would you say has been your most successful campaign that you've launched, and what specific results did you see? Of course, for your definition, you mentioned that marketing, is very results, like you're looking for the results, whether it's leads or brand awareness, whatever the case is. So tell us a little bit more about what you have been involved in specifically and what results came from it.
Sure. So I know that you're going to have much larger companies and, or CMOs of much larger company. I mean, by definition, if you have a CMO, you're large. So I'm really going to, my campaign stories are based on being, kind of a smaller company and even just startups, right? And the most successful marketing campaign that I launched for the law firm is we used a company called Yodel at the very beginning, because we started the firm on, just a little bit before June 1st, 2009, launched on June 1st. And in building up the operations, while we had some startup capital, we knew that we needed to generate leads in some way. And we needed to generate leads in a way that would allow us time to continue to build the operations. And so it had to be a passive lead generation component. And so what we did was we went to this company, and there are many competitors to Yodel. So, I'm not quite sure how it's doing right now. This is back in 2009. They were the new kid on the block, and I believe they were actually a Philadelphia-based company. And what they would do is essentially create these kind of search engine optimized campaigns around the areas that we, as a firm were trying to develop, which were immigration for Peter's practice and, kind of business law for my practice. And one of the unique areas where our practices blended is a visa called the EB-5 visa, where you invest $500,000 and you, your spouse, and any children under the age of 21 get green cards, right? This is obviously a non-U.S. citizen applying for this. Mm-hmm. And so it is a sophisticated visa in the sense that it is an immigration matter, but it requires, investment counsel, and that's where we were kind of pairing up for these. And so our Yodel campaign, our search engine optimization campaign, was for immigration, for corporate, and then specifically for this visa. And so when they ran the campaign, and whenever somebody would call the phone, we would know that it was Yodel from the Yodel campaign, because it would go Yodel, and then the person would have one line. I was just like, so there was kind of a running joke for the first 3 months. And I would say not only did we get just kind of our normal returns in relation to what we were paying, and unfortunately I can't tell you what we were paying, but we got an EB-5 visas, by the way, are like the white whales of immigration work. Because how often do you get somebody who has a capacity to invest $500,000, right?
Right.
So by definition, they're rare. So not only did we get an EB-5 visa client out of it, and the fees to do it sort of dwarfed any other fee that we would do on the immigration side by a factor of maybe even 20, right? And in addition to that, the person for whom we did the EB-5 visa, the person who applied for her was her older brother, and her older brother ended up being the CEO of literally a multinational corporation that was doing work, a government contractor for the U.S. government in Afghanistan during the Afghanistan war. And we ended up representing 3 companies of a 6-company conglomerate. And a lot of the work was being done in that Afghanistan side. And when they went into Africa and when they went into the Middle East, we were doing work for them. Wow. So when you talk about the most successful marketing campaign ever in the history of mankind, that was definitely... They ended up being a client for 5 years, and we probably did maybe $500,000 to $600,000 from them alone. They represented like a large chunk of our business just from that YOLO campaign. So there is proof positive of the most successful marketing campaign ever.
Wow.
Yep.
That's amazing. I mean, the specific results that you can see from that. I mean, like that's amazing.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. So tell me a little bit. So I know that if we look at today's buyer, how things are progressing online, what has been your approach to embracing the new developments that are coming about?
So, it's a broad question, so I'm going to define it in a way that makes sense to me, right?
Okay.
And I'm going to cheat a little bit because, before we got on the call, I said, it's best to describe me as a serial entrepreneur because I've got this other thing that how we met, which is through the item.
Right.
And in terms of adapting to new developments, so the difficulty of maintaining, especially as a small business, maintaining a marketing campaign is the consistency, right? And the consistency is kind of threefold. One, it's just, are you organized enough to make sure that you're doing the things that you're supposed to do? So are you sending out your newsletters on a regular basis, etc.? And if you, the entrepreneur, is doing it, then it's just, are you disciplined enough to do it at whatever pace you've set for yourself? The second is, do you have the personnel to do it? So if you delegate it, is the person going to do it, going to be able to sustain? It's kind of an extension of the first thing, but it's often, the person doesn't get the importance of consistency or the importance of marketing. And so there's a little bit of tension there in a small business environment. And then the third is, do you have the resources to sustain it, right? So sometimes you have to pay for Yodel, for example, or pay for contractually or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And if you haven't figured out what works for you, you might be spending it on maybe 4 or 5 platforms, and then all of a sudden it becomes unsustainable. But if you started campaigns on each one and you stop, then you kind of lose the momentum that you would have built had you sustained it over time. So these are some of the challenges. So how do you do it in a way that is sustainable, that fits in with your lifestyle, that you would do it anyway, even if it wasn't sort of an obligation of the firm? And that's where the item came from. But the item really evolved from watching a gentleman called Elijah Downstretch. He's here. He's a pretty connected guy here in Philadelphia. You might want to have him on your show.
Okay.
And he has a group called the Men's Book Club. But the parenthetical after the Men's Book Club is where no books are read. And what he's done is essentially he gets kind of high-functioning professionals together for a network, all men. And what we do is kind of very deliberate networking. So one person kind of talks about their business for a while, but then you get to sit with people who are upwardly mobile and are looking to network deliberately in a comfortable environment. And so over time, there may be 60 or 80 people, 20 or 30 show up per dinner and get together. And I realized that he was essentially marketing himself, right? Because he's a financial advisor, works for Bernstein. And in getting together, when you think about, first of all, you get to know him intimately as a person. So you get to know the fact that he's a community person. But then you also get to know the fact that he is a financial advisor at Bernstein, and he has automatically gained your trust. And he is curating a group of potential clients in real time, because for every meal, you have to pay a certain amount of money, which, not that it's a tremendous amount, but if you're comfortable paying that, then you are in a certain bracket, right? And these are business owners, whatever. So he's just, in a very subtle but very powerful way, marketing himself. And he's not, sending out brochures or whatever. And even if you do receive something from him, it is from a trusted position. So in going with, in building the item, it's sort of a similar thing. Not that I'm really looking to get a great degree of gain, but it's a way to build not necessarily a marketing pipeline, although it turns into that, but a brand where you are contributing to the community in a meaningful way. And you're not doing it in a rapacious way at all. It's just giving back. And in giving back, you are marketing yourself because people know now Kahiga Tiagha is either developing programs for the item, like the Item Academy and all these things, but he also happens to be an attorney. And I think that's the way that we have to go. We can't be on the nose anymore. We have to do something that are passion projects, like the item for me, so I just do it and it's genuine and people see that genuine light shining, and therefore are going to be attracted to me as a person, and then as a brand, and then as a community organizer. And it's the same thing that you're doing with this show. It's a passion play for you, but you're a marketer and you're having conversations and are going to be educating people like us. So I think that's how, if you are going to ask me about new developments, I think that's how you have to do it. Unobtrusively, passionately, and in a way that gives back to the community.
Absolutely. And to me, it just points back to how so many efforts for marketing right now are really centered around providing value.
Exactly.
And that's really the theme that I'm hearing. And I know, social media and different platforms that are out there now are really appealing to this personalized approach, if you will, to how to communicate with others. So, in your opinion, why would you say that is so important today? Or, why has that made, things like what your, the men's book club, what about what he's doing is so effective? Why is it working for him?
Because you know what it is? It's because people are opting in. As opposed to pulling people, you're just, or I guess, let me not do the push-pull because I'm not sure I'd be able to explain it. But let's just stick with the opting in. It's kind of like why the item is just kind of a natural thing, right? Mm-hmm. We have a platform and people opt in to receive messaging. So I'm never really intruding. I have to balance out how I communicate, right, through the platform. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we deliberately go dark just so that people have a breather, because sometimes there are flurries of emails, right? But people are opting into our experience. And it's the same thing with the men's book club. We're all opting in to have dinner with one another. So if you and I have agreed to be in this group, we know that it's been curated, right, by Elijah because we both trust him. So that trust means that whoever I meet in this circle has the extension of trust from that gentleman, and therefore I am more likely to open up and I'm more likely to do business with that person. And they're not going to take my pitch as a hard pitch. It's going to be a peer just facilitate. It's an extension of the country club environment,
Right.
And it's the same thing with the item, in terms of building a community where people are opting in and they are finding what they're looking for, networking and resources, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's probably it.
Yeah. So tell me then, in your opinion, what do you feel like most marketing departments are missing today?
So I think it varies, right? I think it varies from a small perspective. I think it's the resources. From the larger perspective, just candidly, I think it's diversity. Because, even though it's negative from the consumer standpoint because they're not being offered a particular solution, I think larger companies often underestimate the value of diversity in terms of whether it's a consumer base or having diversity within their own marketing departments, right? So we can go from the positive in terms of the more diverse your marketing department is, the more effectively you can communicate, your messaging will be, the more ROI you will get because you're going to get in a larger leads, larger audience because you're just appealing to more people, right? But from the negative side, it also avoids you being tone deaf, right? Because if you look at Twitter, sometimes, Black Twitter goes crazy because, I forget the latest brand that did something that was the, advertising equivalent of blackface. But they would only do something like that because there was nobody in the room to say, guys, that does not resonate. That's just wrong. And it's not just about having diversity in the marketing department. It's about having diversity that is empowered, right? Because if it's the low marketing intern or the junior marketing associate, they may not be able to speak up in that meeting, right? To have the authority to make sure that the proper decision is made. But if it is somebody with the appropriate authority, then, then companies can manage their risk a lot better. And we know that there are cases over and over again where marketing campaigns and, slash advertising campaigns have gone horribly wrong. So that's what I would say is missing in the small and the larger environments.
Gotcha. Now we're gonna, because I know our time is precious here, so I don't want to prolong or take too much. But let's finish up with a couple other quick questions. Now I thought this question would be interesting to ask because I think it really helps to bring light to what you feel is most important. So the question would be, what is most important to you? Acquiring new customers or retaining old ones? Retaining old ones. Yeah.
I don't even need a beat. So anybody who goes through any program, right? And Goldman Sachs, 10,000 Small Businesses or anything, learns that it is 5 times more expensive to get a new client than to retain the old one. And in retaining the old ones, a business that can retain their old clients means it's that discipline that I'm talking about. It means that you have systems in place to continually not only provide the core service that they came into the room for, but you are constantly providing value and you are touching that client enough to make sure that they continue to see value and seek you for new business, so you can kind of generate new business that way. Also, the beauty of retaining it is that you now have a longer batch of data to predict your business, right? Every time you bring a new client in, yes, you have more data about your sales cycle, but you don't have more data about how you are adding value to your client. So, retaining old ones by going around the block kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think, of course, the phrase there that we've heard so many times, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush.
That's right. That's right.
So it fits very well. So, okay, here's another interesting question. Just if we were to fast forward, let's say 15, 20 years into the future, what do you think marketing would look like?
The way it's going right now, it's going to be highly, highly personalized, right? And I think it is going to be highly personalized because it is going to be more analysis around data. And I'm in every facet of our lives right now, we need to get very facile with the idea of collecting data and processing that data, finding out what it's telling us, and then applying that data. The companies that do that are going to win because A, they're going to be able to reach their true ideal customers more efficiently. And for those who are selling, they can prove their case studies or they can prove their value proposition more empirically than the companies that don't do that. And so I think it's going to be much more personalized, but the path to that is just being relentless about collecting, applying data.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Now, as we wrap up here, Kahiga, it's been awesome having you on the show. I think that your expertise and what you're bringing to the table is so valuable. So as we wrap up, I know again that you've been involved with so many different companies and different facets across the globe. What advice would you have for other leaders in marketing who are listening to the show?
So, well, I'm assuming that, talking to my peers, I don't really have anything to tell them. I'm sure most people are knowledgeable, and I would barely call myself a marketing guru. I would say to the startups or smaller companies out there about what they should know about marketing is, make sure that you are strategic about who you're trying to reach, right? Don't do the shotgun approach about just trying to reach everyone. Even if you decide that you have several audiences to reach, make sure that one size does not fit all. And so be very deliberate about how you're reaching them. And then do a test run, of an appreciable length to make sure that A, you've invested enough time to get real feedback to figure out whether you should continue or not. And which means that you need to be disciplined. Don't try to take on too many things at once. Really kind of allocate your time and resources so that you can get, that clear amount of data so you can make a decision about whether you should continue or not. So that's really where I think the most critical thing for people who are looking to do a successful marketing campaign. That's what I think.
That's great advice. I mean, especially for startups. And I know Pat Flynn, for example, he's come up with a book called Will It Fly? A way to systematically run out some testing on an idea or a concept or a business before you invest, all the money that goes into starting a business. I think that's really, really valuable, especially for those, like we mentioned, who are starting businesses. So that's awesome advice. And
I'm sorry to step on your line there, but just to kind of round that out, I'm saying that because like the yodel moment is kind of proof, right? And it's not proof in terms of, that what happened was serendipitous in one case. I will call it, God, obviously, in terms of that degree of, exponential return. That's just amazing, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact that we were smart enough to have a passive marketing system that what lasted long enough for us to get smarter about how to tailor it better and better, that made our SEO campaign, like we did it for probably 6 months. And over that 6 months, it got tailored to the point where I think it was in month 3 or 4 where we picked up that EB5 client. And so it was an advantage because it was passive, but it was also an advantage because it was low cost enough that we were able to do it over that 6-month period, and during which we got smarter and smarter about it. So just to kind of give a practical explanation to what I had said before. But,
awesome. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, as we wrap up the show here, how can people get in touch with you, Kahiga, if they want to reach out to you, connect? What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So for any legal matters, you can reach me at Tiagha, Tiagha, law, LAW.com. So tiaghalaw.com. Or by email, Tiagha, Tiagha, at tiaghalaw.com. You can always reach me on my cell, 215-206-6422. For any tech matters, the item philly@gmail.com. And check us out at theitem.org. That's THEITEM.org. That's our tech initiative, trying to make sure that Philadelphia's tech ecosystem is inclusive as it develops. Thanks so much, Parshell. I really appreciate the opportunity here.
Awesome, and thank you. For those who might be driving or doing something else, the information we'll have in the show notes at themarketingboss.net/Kahiga. So I will definitely have those linked there so people can get the information. So Kahiga, thank you again for being on the show.
Absolutely. No, it's a pleasure to be the first one, and good luck the rest of the way.
Man, what a great interview. Definitely, guys, be sure to connect with Kahiga online. I'm sure he'll be glad to hear from you guys. And if you enjoyed this podcast, be sure to subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher and leave a review for us. It really means a lot to me. Well, that does it for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, my friends, remember, a good boss is a good leader. Go out there and serve your gift to the world because you're the boss.
Thanks so much for listening to the Marketing Boss Podcast with your host, video marketing expert, Parshell Houghton. We'll catch you next time.